Hi everybody, and welcome to the Patreon exclusive monthly episode, which was supposed to be a mini-sode. I think this one's clocking in at like 5 to 6 minutes, but this is an off-requested subject, something I get questions about all the time on Twitter. It's POSCAs. POSCA paint markers or pens, whichever you prefer. It is a water-based acrylic paint marker. And I'm going to admit I didn't do any research before starting this up. My experience with POSCAs is just using them a lot. I didn't know much about them before, maybe a year and a half ago, and I got to try them out and immediately loved them, because at that point I hadn't really done much traditional art. I had been a digital art guy, and these felt a lot like Photoshop brushes to me. They're super high opacity because they're paint, and so as you can see, they can go really easily over one another. Now, of course, there are limitations to this, some of which you'll see in this demonstration, where I will use maybe a lighter color, a yellow, and as you would expect with paint, it doesn't always cover perfectly. I think I'm about to put down the yellow here. I'm narrating this after the fact. That's a little behind the scenes. So as you can see, like, the yellow over the green doesn't perfectly cover the green. It does a very good job. But if you apply a couple of layers, it'll totally cover really well. And definitely it works much better than most water-based paint media that I've ever used. The line is very clean. There are a couple of different tips you can get on the POSCA pens. I tend to use the bigger tip because it feels better to me. It has a very felt feel. But if you want precision and control, there's also the fine, I think it's called bullet tip, and those have like a plasticky feel. It's a much finer line. I find, though, here's a tip, if you're using them a bit on the angle, on the side, I do notice they tend to spray a bit when that nib hits the surface. It'll kind of like pop, just push off some paint. So you have to be very careful to either draw straight up and down or in more controlled strokes when you're doing that. Now right here, I'm showing the coverage of the white, which I use all the time for star fields or just to dot in a bit of extra texture. But yeah, you can see over dark, it has really, really good coverage. And controlled coverage too. You don't usually get opacity like that with something where you can make a fine line. And I feel like that is POSCA's strength. And what else is there to say, really? I mean, if you follow me, you know that I use these things a lot in my work. I tend to make a background with gouache paint for a really loose wash, and then do a lot of detail work with POSCAs. A lot of grass, trees, textures, any kind of character work that I do, I tend to do with POSCAs. And they're fantastic because you can do an entire painting and then come in with the POSCAs later and add characters or items or, props, things like that. And it's super clean, but it doesn't lose that painterly feel. But as you'll see later on in this video demonstration, when we get to the second part, you can do a lot of nice loose things with these markers because it is just like an acrylic water-based media. You can actually use water and a brush and kind of move things around and keep it loose and get a very painterly feel with a brush, which is cool that that's an option. I don't think I would ever use it instead of watercolor or gouache or acrylic paint, but it's really cool to have that option of getting that fine, defined, bold, opaque line, but then be able to feather the edge a bit with some water and a brush. Here's what I'm talking about. So I put down a little bit And now I'm just taking some water and kind of moving it around. Just picking a little bit of that paint out. And making it like sort of a misty mountain there. Those trees in the midground, I dropped the marker into some of the water, so it was already starting to spread a bit, because I find that's a really effective way to make misty treetops in the distance. And here I am just kind of messing around. Now what I do in a second, right after I do this blow drying here, is I'll drop a little bit of POSCA paint in the sky, and this is, it goes really fast, but I meant to show what to avoid, is I pushed it hard into the paper. And when you do that, you'll see that it leaves behind a mark because I pushed it so hard into the ground. I kind of pointed at it there. And I kind of like try to scrub it away and like show that you can sort of get it back up again with some water and a little bit of paper towel. And it doesn't look that bad, but it's something to be aware of, is it's strong paint. I mean, it's very opaque, so you have to be careful with it, have a light touch. And now here's finishing off the painting. In sort of my way, which is to draw some foreground elements in POSCAs. A nice strong line to stand out against the loose background. And that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll have another one of these videos next month. See you then.